Welcome everyone to the second Anti-Racism Town Hall focusing on staff. It's my pleasure to introduce UCSF Chancellor Sam Hoggett.
Thank you, Lisa, and good afternoon, everyone. I also offer my welcome to our second quarterly UCSF Anti-Racism Town Hall. These town halls are part of an ongoing conversation about systemic racism and what we at UCSF are doing to extend our ongoing work to ensure a truly inclusive and equitable community. The recently launched Anti-Racism Initiative, which is being led by Vice Chancellor Renee Navarro, is already making progress. I hope we will continue to see this work build momentum. While the impetus for this series was the national reckoning on anti-Blackness that ignited this past summer, racism is tragically nothing new. It is embedded in our economic system, our justice system, and our healthcare system. No organization is immune, including our own. Over the summer, members of my cabinet and I have received numerous letters from students, faculty, and staff expressing the vital importance of re-examining UCSF's own institutional structures and practices. We heard you, agree with you, and we thank you for sharing your thoughts. Your concerns and ideas have helped us greatly as we have developed and we continue to refine the Anti-Racism Initiative. In addition, the results from the recently launched Pulse survey have given us important feedback on staff experiences and perceptions on institutional gaps. Among a wealth of comments that we received, and I thank you for that feedback, the comments have included, number one, the need to increase and empower manager accountability. And number two, to provide relevant training for everyone in our organization. Today's town hall will focus on anti-racism efforts for our staff. The UCSF staff, who number over 20,000 individuals, are essential, I would say vital, to the success of our mission of advancing health worldwide. We cannot achieve this mission if our staff employees are not treated respectfully, equitably, and inclusively, enabling everyone to contribute at their full potential. Therefore, as part of the Anti-Racism Initiative, we have reinforced our commitment to improving the experience of working at UCSF for all people across all roles, and we want to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to advance and thrive. Now, we are aware that the data shows that this has not always been the case, and we're working hard to address that. You will hear more about these efforts from Vice Chancellor Navarro and today's speakers. So our panelists today are Naoki Sacramento, Vice Chancellor and Director of the Office of Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination, Jeff Chu, Vice President, Human Resources of UCSF Health, Inez Bailey, Director of Education and Strategic Initiatives for the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, as well as the Institute for Global Health Sciences. Inez serves as co-chair of the Black Caucus. And Lisa Cisneros, Senior Director of Strategic Communications in University Relations. Lisa serves as the co-chair of the Chicanx Latinx Campus Association, or CLCA. Before we move to our panel discussion, I'd like to remind you that we encourage your questions. Your questions are a very important part of the dialogue that we must maintain at UCSF to stay focused on our collective goals, maintain transparency, and build further trust amongst all members of our community. Following this event today, and as part of our ongoing efforts to increase this dialogue, we will have a town hall focused on the faculty. Details for that session will be shared soon. So I thank you again for your questions and for staying actively engaged in this very important work. As an institution, we need the participation of individuals from all our diverse communities as we work together to build an equitable community that reflects our pride, values, and mission to serve the public without discrimination and bias. So now let's hear from Vice Chancellor Navarro.
Thank you, Chancellor Hagood. Good afternoon. I want to also thank all of you for engaging with us on this very important initiative. Share my screen here to share with you the UCSF Anti-Racism Initiative and provide you with an overview of the work that we will be doing in this initiative. We have been listening to the campus community. We have been working on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion for well over 9 years in the Office of Diversity and Outreach. But we recognize that there is a new imperative. There is an imperative for us to act not in incremental ways, but in transitional ways, transformative ways in which we can truly dismantle some of the systemic inequities that exist. We've listened to the campus constituents across all of the campus, and we want to continue to engage in a dialogue with you. As we think about the anti-racism initiative, several themes have emerged from those conversations. Certainly the need for safety and security on our campus, and a task force has been stood up to look at those issues. We'll be rolling out new diversity, equity, and inclusion mandatory foundational training for the entire campus community. The schools are engaging in anti-racism curriculum for their students and doing professional development for faculty to teach those curricula. And we're advancing excellence in staff recruitment with staff equity advisors, and you'll hear more about that from Jeff Chu. We'll also be examining the use of race in medicine through both the Repair Project and our Race in Medicine series of seminars. We're looking at a research diversity initiative and how our anchor institution and pathway support will continue to diversify our campus and engage more directly with our community. We want to foster dialogue. And again, it's so important that you're here with us today. We have really advanced our communication and our accountability. And these series of town halls are one of the ways in which we want to continue those conversations. In addition, through our newsletters from the Office of Diversity and Outreach, we want these conversations to be meaningful and to move our issues forward. Our accountability around our safety task force, the Chancellor has charged this task force to recommend ways to ensure that UCSF's policing and security protocols serve our community without discrimination, bias, or unnecessary use of force, and really create a safe and welcoming environment for us all. So we're thinking about this in holistic ways to ensure the safety and security and the welcoming of all members of our campus community, our patients, and our visitors as well. We're expanding our learning, as I alluded to. The education and training mandatory foundational training will be launched later this year. The Differences Matter champion training has been expanded to include staff and faculty from across the campus and UCSF Health. And the cabinet is also committed to continuous equity improvement and learning. Here's a glimpse of a snapshot from the Foundations of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion mandatory training. And I'm excited to see this work moving forward. And again, it'll be launched later this year or early 2021. We're still working on actions as it relates to wellness and healing from racial trauma. We recognize that many members of our campus community are suffering from the impacts of the traumas that they've experienced. And our goal is to expand the availability of culturally congruent care through our FSAP and COPE programs to pilot a bias incident response team so that we can facilitate healing using a restorative justice model, and to establish a care advocate which would provide a confidential resource for individuals who have experienced harassment and discrimination, much as we have in existence for people experiencing sexual violence or sexual harassment. With that, we are going to move on to a conversation from the Director of the Office for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination and Assistant Vice Chancellor Naoki Sacramento, who will share with you the work that's being done to assure that your voices are heard and certainly that your complaints are taken seriously and investigated. With that, Naoki.
Good afternoon. Let me just get my screen shared here, just one second. Okay, so as mentioned, my name is Naoki Sacramento, and I oversee the Office for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination, commonly referred to as OPHD. And in my role, I serve as UCSF's Title IX officer, EEO officer, and ADA coordinator. Oftentimes I'm asked, what is the role of OPHD? Well, we are the compliance arm of the Office of Diversity and Outreach, and we handle a number of compliance functions. Of particular importance, at least for today's town hall, is our work with the UC policy on discrimination, harassment, and affirmative action in the workplace policy. That policy covers a number of protected categories, and all managers, including faculty and staff supervisors, are mandatory reporters of all categories listed on the screen. But of particular importance for today, we're focusing on race, color, national origin, and ancestry. What mandatory reporting essentially means is that all UCSF managers and supervisors are reported to advise our office of any such potential complaints of discrimination or harassment. So where are we today in the wake of the George Floyd murder and the recent social unrest? Overall, our office has seen a 47% increase in the number of complaints that have been filed over this 4-month period when we compare it to the same time last year. Our data reflects complaints that were filed by students, faculty, and staff covering both the non-discrimination policy as well as the UC sexual violence and sexual harassment policy. However, of particular note, the largest increase by far has been in complaints alleging concerns of national origin and race harassment and discrimination. This complaint data has really told us the story of our UCSF community feeling quite empowered and really willing to share their experiences with us so that they can assist UCSF leadership with achieving our anti-racism initiatives. Community members have come into our office and shared real concerns about racial preferences in career opportunities, racial stereotyping experiences, and even inappropriate use of racial slurs in our workplaces. My office has opened a number of formal investigations into these concerns, and we are taking them all seriously and working to respond to the influx of complaints. Again, if you're interested in filing a complaint, it's important that you know how to do so. So please check out our website at ophd.ucsf.edu. And you can fill out our complaint form and email it to our office at ophd@ucsf.edu. Simultaneously, if you're not comfortable reporting at this point and you're not a mandatory reporter, meaning you're not a supervisor or a faculty member or a manager, you can anonymously report your concerns to the whistleblower hotline. Please also be aware that UCSF does have some confidential resources that are available to assist you and speak with you about any concerns that you may have. And those resources at this time are the Faculty, Staff, and Assistance Program, as well as the Ombuds. And if you're a student, Student Health and Counseling is also available to assist you on a confidential basis. Again, we are willing to work with you to address any of your concerns, and we look forward to partnering with you all, and we applaud you for the willingness to share your stories. Thank you.
Jeffrey Chu.
All right, just give me 1 second while I get it all teed up. My apologies. Okay, thank you. So for my portion of the presentation, I'm going to share some racial demographic data points for UCSF staff. So please note that this information does not include Benioff Children's Hospital Oakland or our affiliates. Also, there's a good amount of information that I have to share in a very short time frame, but I can answer questions that you raise in the Q&A. So the first set of data is around racial demographics of staff leadership. The levels listed here are the career tracks and management levels of manager 1 through 4 up to our senior management group, which is SMG. So please note the color keys that's used to represent the federal race categories, as these colors are going to be used in the charts in the upcoming slides as well. And I know many of you are likely looking at this on small screens, so I'm going to share a little bit about that the navy blue represents white Caucasian, the Asian is lighter blue, orange is Black African American, the green is Hispanic Latinx. The 2 or more races is a slightly darker blue, Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander is red. American Indian, Native American is a very light blue. And then lastly, the gray is for those who have not disclosed their race. So you can see that with continued focused efforts that have been happening at the top leadership roles in the organization, that there is an increased racial diversity in the top leadership roles. But when you look at the manager level 1 up through the manager level 4, you'll see a steady decline in the racial diversity. So the next set of slides I'm going to share are about the staff involuntary reductions that were taken due to the impact of the COVID pandemic. So 558 staff, which represents around 2.5% of the total staff population at UCSF. And I say staff because staff population doesn't include faculty, academics, and students. So 2.5% of the staff received an involuntary reduction due to the impacts of COVID. These include permanent and temporary layoffs, permanent and temporary reductions in time, and the release of non-career employees such as per diem employees and those in limited appointments. 38 of those 550 employees, primarily those career employees who received a layoff notice, were redeployed to another UCSF role to avoid immediate layoff. So the table here shows the racial demographic breakdown of the staff who were impacted. The first bar shows the racial demographic breakdown of UCSF staff overall. The second, third, and fourth bar show the demographic breakdown of the staff who are impacted. So the first is those that were released, non-career employees that were released. The second is those who received a reduction in time. The fourth bar is those who received a layoff notice, and the last bar represents those who were redeployed to another role to avoid layoff. So the majority of the staff reductions, though, occurred in campus life services. Since the campus life service operations were curtailed or closed for an extended period of time due to public health orders or loss of significant revenue due to decreased business. The most impacted units in campus life services included conference and events, fitness and recreation, documents and media, and transportation services. This graph, similar to the graph in the previous slide, shows the demographic breakdown of the staff reductions in the context of campus life services. Campus life services is comprised largely of frontline workers who are more racially diverse than the employee population of UCSF as a whole. Similarly, again, the first bar is the total population of campus life services. The next three are those who are impacted, and the last bar is those who are redeployed. So this was an extraordinarily difficult business decision for UCSF that was done only when the business situation was dire and after exhausting all other options. While our analysis does not indicate adverse impact within job groups, we acknowledge that the job groups most impacted by the effects of the pandemic are those job groups where people of color have greater representation. And we acknowledge that the pain that these reductions have caused. So this brings me to the sense of belonging, which we measured in the 2019 Gallup survey engagements, the Gallup staff engagement survey. The belonging index was added to the 2019 survey with 6 additional questions that were added based on input from UCSF staff about what creates the greatest sense of belonging at UCSF. You'll see that there are gaps between the white and Asian staff population and the Black and Latinx population, with certain questions around career development, managers acting as an advocate for career advancement, and also around respect and equity. So what are we doing about this as an institution? I want to note that I'm just going to cover some of the efforts that are in progress right now, as there are diversity, equity, inclusion efforts happening all across UCSF. The first objective is to increase racial diversity in leadership. The Chancellor's Cabinet has agreed to a set of standard practices for recruitment, which Dr. Navarro referenced, that are based on best practices in the industry towards equity and inclusion. These standard practices are required for any recruitment at the manager level 3 and up. And this is anticipated just to be the starting point, and expect that these standard practices will soon apply to other leadership roles at UCSF as well. UCSF has invested in resources to establish career paths at UCSF to advance staff from frontline roles where UCSF has the greatest amount of racial diversity to mid-level roles. This is part of UCSF's commitment to the as an anchor institute as well. We are also intentionally focusing on the Excel internship program. I think many of you have heard about this program, but this program provides pathways for members of underserved community members in San Francisco to frontline positions at UCSF. We are also intentionally investing in the Excel graduates who are still working here at UCSF in either career appointments or in temporary positions. We're launching an Excel alumni group where we have a specific development program being launched for those graduates this year. Also, we have in place a number of offerings through our Learning and Organizational Development department to support the findings from the Gallup survey. The one thing I want to point out is that leveraging strengths, so Strength Finders, many of you have heard of that, has shown that when a manager has taken Clifton's strengths, it helps to elevate belonging and engagement for all staff reporting to that manager. But when we broke the data out by race, we found that the greatest increase in engagement was for Black staff who report to that manager. We've also included other elements of diversity and equity inclusion in other development offerings that are available for all staff, such as the professional staff development, as well as something new, which is LinkedIn Learning, which is just recently brought into our portfolio of learning opportunities that are available. We are working really hard to curate these offerings so it's easier for staff to find. The last one is around, is for people leaders, which is called the Courage to Act, which is a learning lab, and it's focused for managers to help them identify next steps in addressing racial injustice at UCSF. So lastly, I'm going to share a bit about accountability. The organization is working to establish meaningful and measurable goals for achieving racial equity, including commitments for all UCSF to take the mandatory DEI training, which Dr. Navarro shared about earlier in the presentation. We will also be measuring the belonging index and staff engagement again in April of 2021 when we do the staff engagement survey. Again, I will be available for questions during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Inez Bailey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a moment while I share my slides with you all. Let's see. Oops. 1 second. Wow. Hold on 1 second. My apologies. Let's try that one more time. There we go. All right. Thanks for your patience. Thank you, everyone. My name is Inez Bailey, and I am pleased to represent the Black Caucus for this conversation. For those not familiar with the caucus, just a short background. The Black Caucus is a staff organization that provides a forum that addresses and responds to the issues that affect the lives of Black employees on the UCSF campus. In addition to our monthly meetings and ongoing activities, there are a few activities that we'd like to highlight for you today. This spring, our membership expanded to the Benioff Children's Hospital, and so we welcomed the Oakland Black Caucus, which is led by co-directors Stephanie Brown and Abdur Shamsu. We have also been particularly invested over the last 12 months in the Professional Development Network, which prioritizes activities that support the advancement of Black staff. This was developed as a committee within the Black Caucus. And finally, a Social Justice Committee, which is newly formed, is a committee focused on advocacy and community building within the caucus. And so please visit the Black Caucus website. You can learn more about the history and the activities of the Black Caucus. There's quite a bit there to see. So for today, following the murder of George Floyd, and in response to the historic, ongoing, and amplified crisis of police violence that targets the Black community, the Black Caucus published a statement on anti-racism that led to an invitation from the campus leadership to join a dialogue on issues related to the experience of Black staff at UCSF. These initial conversations further led to a document on advancing Black lives at UCSF. And both documents are available in their entirety on the Black Caucus website, which I encourage you again to visit. The website addresses there at the bottom for you. So for today, I want to share with you the primary themes of the Advancing Black Lives document and the high-level activities that have been related to each theme. Again, this is a document that was submitted to campus leadership and others and has been in discussion, but again, wanting to share that with all of you today. So in order to advance Black lives at UCSF, we have started conversations with campus leadership with the goal of naming and acknowledging Black staff and lives at campus, recruiting and retaining Black staff as well. With regard to naming and acknowledging Black lives, we would like to connect all Black staff and faculty through a mailed invitation to all self-identified Black employees, which informs and invites Black staff to join the Black Caucus. We'd like to also see the amplification of the voices and experiences of Black people at UCSF, an opportunity to listen to the firsthand testimonials of Black employees to better understand those experiences in ways that our surveys have given us in some ways, but that we believe that the anecdotal and firsthand information would be very useful as we begin to create the path forward. And finally, in this area, the commission of a comprehensive report on the state of Black lives at UCSF to include disaggregated data on the positions and places in which Black staff are and are not. Again, we think this is one opportunity to enhance the work that's been done by some of the surveys already, and also to use that data to better understand those experiences and then how we move forward as Black staff. The second area that we have explored and spoken to is the area of recruiting and retaining Black lives at UCSF. How do we encourage staff, new staff to apply to join the campus? And then how do we retain through the climate experience those people who are already here? We'd like to see the Black Caucus included in an advisory capacity in campus recruitment and professional development initiatives. And we welcome a sustained engagement and communication with the Chancellor's Office and campus leadership on the issues related to campus climate for Black employees. And finally, we'd like to see an investment of appropriate financial and personnel resources to accomplish these priorities. Again, these are just high-level activities related to the priorities that were identified by the Black Caucus. We welcome the opportunity to, through these discussions, start to identify and create a path of action that helps us all achieve the goals that we've named here at UCSF relative to this space. So I thank you, and will also be available to answer questions following the end of this presentation.
Thank you very much. Lisa Cisneros.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I have the pleasure of being both the speaker and a moderator today. Thank you, Chancellor Hoggood and Vice Chancellor Navarro, for the opportunity to represent the Chicanx Latinx Campus Association, or CLCA. On behalf of CLCA and co-chair Mario Peraza, who couldn't be here, we stand in solidarity with our colleagues in the Black Caucus, members of the Council of Minority Organizations, as well as those in the LGBTQ and disability communities. Let me say at the outset, Black and Brown lives matter. We fully support UCSF's anti-racism initiative and Anchor Institution initiative, and stand ready to help make this university and our community at large more equitable and inclusive. First, a bit about CLCA, now more than 200 people strong. Our group was founded 5 years ago as a way to raise the visibility of voices and increase opportunities for the Latinx community here at UCSF. For our collective efforts to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion, we are proud that CLCA was recognized as one of the nation's most inspiring groups by the largest diversity magazine earlier this year. Thanks to all CLCA members for your efforts. Second, we are united in our sense of purpose. We are partnering with UCSF leadership and the Office of Diversity and Outreach and Human Resources to create a supportive and welcoming campus environment for all members of our UCSF community. We appreciate the ongoing financial and moral support from ODO and the invitation to work directly with Chief Human Resources Officer Corey Jackson and his leadership team. We look forward to being part of the advisory council. We aim to build community and alliances across the campus, UCSF Health, and the UC system by bringing us together to address issues of belonging and engagement and inequities facing the Latinx community, made more apparent during this pandemic. We focus our efforts on staff, the largest population in our UCSF community. We remain concerned about the dearth of Latinx leaders across the university. Before this pandemic, we co-hosted a reception to welcome our new UCSF leaders seen in this picture. It was our chance to celebrate UCSF's first Latina Vice Chancellor, Francesca Vega. It's great to work with her. We look forward to working with all UCSF leaders to implement the recommendations from the Safety Task Force and other groups to ensure that UCSF prioritizes equity, consistency, and accessibility in all aspects of our recovery efforts. I want to give a special shout out to my boss, Vice Chancellor Juan Ha, for his support of this important work. Third, we welcome all members of the Chicanx Latinx community to join us. We meet regularly to socialize and to strategize on how to strengthen our community. Please join us and please vote. Okay, now transitioning to Q&A. We've got several questions on the executive order, and I believe that should go to Vice Chancellor Renee Navarro. How is the administration's ruling on executive order affecting diversity training going to affect the aforementioned training for all members of our community?
Thank you for your presentation, Lisa, and thank you for that question. The executive order identifies that we are committed to doing diversity, equity, and inclusion training as a recipient of federal funds through the Office of Federal Contract Compliance. And in so doing, we feel that we have an obligation to continue to do training to eliminate any barriers for full diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that the intent of the order is to stifle training and to limit our ability to engage in these conversations, but our training, we feel, is very much aligned with our obligations as federal contractors, and we will continue to do the training. The Office of General Counsel has reviewed the order, and we are still awaiting any additional information that may come forward. but we are moving forward with our training. Our goal is to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive of everyone. The training aims to build our, on our pride, values, and principles of community, and not to be divisive in the least.
Thanks for that. This question is for Jeff Chu. What is being done to reduce anti-Black racism and bias in hiring decisions?
So, so this is part of the best practices, is that, first of all, we have to ensure that there is a diversity of perspectives and diversity of race, diversity of gender in those who are involved in the selection process, which is part of the best practices that we're rolling out right now. That is one of the key ways to ensure that there's many different voices that are involved in the decision and the search. We are also looking at providing unconscious bias training to all participants in a search, and this is part of the standard requirements to the M3 level and up recruitment standards, which we will roll out more broadly after we have a little bit of track record of doing this at the M3 level and up. We'll expand that. But those are some of the key ways. There's other elements that have mentioned in the Q&A, such as blinding the resume. Those are all on our roadmap, but we have to take certain steps one step at a time, because there is a level of investment that it takes to kind of get those pieces up and running.
Great, thanks. This question is for Naoki. Are there harassment or discrimination support services and resources available for employees across the Bay, those at Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland?
So Benioff Children's Hospital of Oakland has their own HR and system in place, and they actually receive those types of reports at that particular institution. OPHD specifically serves just the San Francisco side of the UCSF community, as well as Fresno.
Great, thanks, Naoki.
You're welcome.
This question is for the Chancellor. We heard about the curtailment from UC President Michael Drake earlier. What does it mean for UCSF?
Thank you, Lisa. I am not dodging the question, but I can't answer the question just yet. The president is asking for input from the campuses, which is why we sent the message out, and I look forward to receiving your input. It is unclear as a health science campus exactly how it will impact us, much like the 2009 furlough program we had to modify extensively. It's likely that we won't know the answer to the question being asked until sometime in mid-November, and I'll communicate as quickly as I get any information to the campus.
Thank you. This is for Vice Chancellor Navarro. With the hierarchical structure of academia, staff, students, and postdocs often feel powerless when higher-ups make racist remarks. What is the administration doing to create safe ways for everyone to report racism?
Thank you for that question. And I think that was why it was so important for Naoki to present to this group, so that you understand that you have several ways in which to actually file a complaint as it relates to treatment that is harassing and or discriminatory in its nature. In addition to that, I think it's important, and we will again be exploring creating an incident response team that can go in and have conversations with individuals in a more short order prior to any formal complaint, to see whether or not there can be a resolution of issues and some attempts at restorative justice, because a lot of harm is inflicted during those incidents, and we want to actually eliminate them. Part of our education and ongoing education and training of faculty and staff is around the avoidance of these kinds of incidents ever occurring. I mean, that's our ultimate goal, right? That everyone is welcomed and included and not subjected to discriminatory or othering kinds of behavior.
Okay, great. This one's for Jeff Chu. Will the Excel program be expanded into Oakland?
There's a lot of interest in pursuing Oakland as a location. So I know that working with JVS is one of the key partners. They're the community-based organization, so they have a lot of interest in Oakland. So happy to work with members of the Oakland team to see if we can get that started up over there.
Great. This one, I guess, goes to both Renee and Jeff. I'd like to suggest that ODO and HR commission a comprehensive report on employee separation data, reasons why they leave UCSF in total and broken out by racial and ethnic groups. Do you think that's possible? First with Vice Chancellor Navarro.
Yeah, I think that is possible. Like Jeff and HR are great partners, and we work together very well on a number of these issues. And so I think that we certainly could look more carefully at the separation data. We've done some of that exploration already, but we could do it more comprehensively. It's Jeff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have at the separation, we track some very generic types of codes for separation. So we have a little bit of barrier to try to collect the data and analyze it and see how meaningful it is. There's been discussions about potentially augmenting a process around separation to see if we can collect more information. But I know it's on, Renee and I have talked about this, and our teams have talked about the importance of this. So it's already in our plans.
Great. This one is for Vice Chancellor Navarro. Some institutions are looking at removing the tenure track as it keeps racist faculty members safe. Is UCSF considering that?
Chancellor Hoggett? No. UCSF has not, we have not engaged in a conversation about the removal of the tenure track. I can say that I chaired a task force across the UC health systems, all 18 health science programs, and we are recommending that there be some exploration of the academic senate and who has membership and who doesn't have membership in the senate. Right now, if you're a adjunct or HS clinical faculty member, you're not a member of the senate. We honor that here at UCSF and include all series and senate activities, but not across other systems. And so we would like the UC Academic Senate across all of our campuses to re-explore how that actually disadvantages, because if we look at those series, that's where the greatest diversity of faculty lie, and we want all to be included and have a voice. I am not aware of any action to get rid of the tenured faculty. Provost Lowenstein might want to respond to that, or the Chancellor.
Well, that was a very good summary, Renee, of where things stand. And the problem is that we face the need to be part of a 10 campus system. And I have not really detected any significant movement on both of these issues from the majority of the other campuses.
Thank you. This one is for Naoki. If you report to your manager that you have been discriminated against, are they required to formally report it?
Well, that is a fairly factual analysis, and it really depends on what you have specifically told your manager. And we're really only talking about claims of discrimination and harassment based on protected categories. So if you just say, I feel like I'm being discriminated against, unless you said based on my race, for example, or my disability, a manager might not take that as a report of discrimination or harassment requiring our office's involvement.
Okay, thank you for that. This question is for Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Dan Lowenstein. Can you give us an update on the security task force or safety task force? Give us an update in terms of our approach on policing here at UCSF.
Yes, I'll be brief because we could discuss this for an hour. Here's the update. The task force that is jointly led by Vice Chancellor Navarro and myself has been working over the last 2.5 months. We now have a draft report that yesterday achieved consensus within the task force, and we'll be turning this to the Chancellor within the next 4 to 5 days. And once he has reviewed it, we'll be prepared to share it with the rest of the campus. Just two high-level points on where the task force has come to this point. The first is that we really are committed to a holistic approach to all things related to safety and security, both from the dangers that rarely but importantly occur in society and on our campuses, as well as the many interactions that occur that can be resolved in a peaceful way rather than having to involve uniformed police or security officers. So as part of this holistic concept, we would like to see an integration of uniformed police, of our current what are called security personnel, but in the future will be thought of as campus ambassadors, and people who are expert in de-escalation, handling the kinds of interactions which can be simply diffused without the reliance on turning to our police. So that's the direction that we're going. There are a total of 9 recommendations that go into detail on the concepts I just referred to, but then other aspects of what we would like to see happen in the coming year.
Okay, thanks, Dan. This one's for Jeff. Do we still require background checks? If so, are we thinking of eliminating that and or degree requirements?
Yeah, we do require background checks for all new hires. And some job titles, such as the police, they have a more intensive ongoing process. But yes, for staff, we do. In the context of racial justice, we've raised the discussion of whether background checks could potentially result in systemic injustice or systemic inequity. So we are still at the very early stages of talking about that. I know from the health system perspective, where background checks have been a long-standing practice, it's required for regulatory and accreditation purposes. So we have a lot of things to think through. Background checks right now only go back 7 years. So that is something that is, there is at least a time limit in how far back the record is. In terms of education, at least I have more knowledge about the health system side for this, that there are some roles that do require an educational background, but most roles require education or equivalent experience in education. But again, we are open and looking at all these different considerations on what's the best for equity and what practices should we put in place moving forward.
Thank you. This one's for Chancellor Hoggood. It's related to the Black Caucus. This person writes, the Black Caucus needs advising and decision-making power at UCSF. Is the Chancellor's office listening to the Black Caucus and giving the Black Caucus a place at the table?
Yes, the Black Caucus is a very important organization at UCSF, as are the other organizations, and they are powerful advisory voices to my cabinet, and will continue to be so in the future.
Thanks for that. For Vice Chancellor Navarro, the Gallup surveys are fairly consistent from year to year, followed by annual reports of how the culture will be improved, but the needle never changes. How is this presentation or report different than previous years?
Well, the Gallup survey is a survey of engagement. And over the course, and thank you, Jeff, for, you could probably address this better than I. Over the course of the last several times in which we've administered the survey, we've developed the Belonging Index to try to get more to issues related to a climate of inclusion. We then have tailored specific trainings, and I think this reflects the kind of investments and trainings that we're aiming at managers. And the Strength Finders training was a direct response to the data we learned from the Gallup index data. You know, it's a continuous equity improvement process, and we are trying different ways in which to improve the climate for all of our staff, be it accountability for those who violate policy, education and training to prevent, building community with the community groups, the staff organizations presenting here today. All of these are ways in which to build that sense of belonging and sense of community at UCSF. And that's how we've been utilizing the data from the Gallup. I don't know, Jeff, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, well stated, Renee. I would point out that the engagement survey results have made improvement throughout the years. We're seeing a little bit of a plateauing, but part of that is to really study this and do deep analysis and disaggregate the data, look at correlations to see where we can make the biggest impact. And I think that this is why we've been really sharing the data about the need to focus specifically on Black and Latinx, which is why the work that we're doing right now and on belonging, really honing in on belonging, is something that's only been in the survey since 2019. And we didn't have a survey in 2020 because we were in the midst of the pandemic. So I think the focus on belonging is a new way that we're trying to look at the survey and try to understand what's at the root cause of the gaps in engagement and belonging.
Thanks. This question is about how our demographics compare to San Francisco and the Bay Area. So who wants to take that question?
Jeff, staff data? Yeah.
I have something that I will share, Renee, if you're completely fine with it. So when we look at, and this just was sent to me during this town hall. So when we look at UCSF staff population as a whole, in general, we're very close to the 9 Bay Area counties in terms of the distribution of demographic. The key things to point out is that at UCSF, we have a greater percentage of Black African American by about 2% greater than what the Bay Area County. However, the biggest gap that we have is with Latinx. That Latinx, what we see as an aggregate at UCSF is around 12%. And in the 9 Bay Area counties, we see around 23%. And we have a greater percentage of Asian than the 9 Bay Area counties and a slightly lower percentage of white. Does that seem to align with what you've heard before, Renee?
Yes, very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this next question is related again to policing, and I'm going to throw it up there for either the chancellor or executive vice chancellor to answer. We keep hearing the terms racial justice, restorative justice, and accountability, but still uphold this policing system rooted in anti-Black racial violence. What's your response to that? It's a repeated question.
I'm happy to start with that, Chancellor Hawgood.
Yeah, I would just comment that I have appointed a task force, as the provost has previously indicated, to help guide us in a holistic approach to campus safety. And I'm looking forward to receiving the task force work, and I would encourage the campus to be patient. This is a big, difficult topic. A very large number of very thoughtful people have been putting in an extraordinary amount of time over the last couple of months on this subject, and you'll hear more from the task force when their recommendations are being provided to me. At this moment, I have not seen the recommendations of the task force. And I think it would be premature for us to discuss them too much until they have been reviewed.
And
Dan, I don't know whether you want to add.
I'll just add that the perspective that is being conveyed by the question has been a very central theme that has been discussed by the task force, and we're doing our best to address that in the recommendations that have been put together.
Thanks. This one's for Naoki. Previously, I reported an issue of sexual harassment and the process was very tedious. It took days to hear back from the office and the investigation took over a year. Are there any plans to increase staffing in your office to ensure complaints are addressed faster?
Thank you for that question. I'm sorry your experience didn't go as smoothly as you would have liked it to. Our goal certainly is to handle these matters as expeditiously as possible. Oftentimes they involve lots of data, lots of witnesses, and complex issues occurring over long periods of time, and that can extend the time that it takes to complete an investigation. Currently, we have a few positions open, but we're always evaluating resource needs and attempting to address them as they come up. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I have a question on how should people talk about Proposition 16 on the state ballot for restoring affirmative action? Some people think it's tricky and possibly racist. Renee, you want to take a crack at that? No. Anyone else?
We're going to discuss politics. Sam.
I would just comment that the regents have unanimously supported the proposition as an official position of the university.
Thank you. For Vice Chancellor Navarro, will we consider restitution for historical legacies that underpin our current Black staffing sense of belonging with our work environment?
I'm sorry, will we consider restitution, reparations kind of thing?
Mhm.
That hasn't been discussed so we haven't had any conversation or discussion about that. And I would need to understand better the issue and the framing and the framework for that.
Okay. For Jeff, is there a timeline to increase diversity of the frontline staff?
The frontline staff are in general very diverse now. And I would say very much are in line with the 9 Bay Area county diversity. It's really from the supervisor level, it's actually at the manager level is where the racial diversity starts to decline. Even the supervisor level tends to mirror somewhat of the front line.
Okay, thanks. This is for Dan Lawrence.
Actually, that said, we're still working closely with our community partners as part of our anchor institution. The Excel program, which I mentioned in my portion of the presentation, is largely focused on under-resourced communities in the San Francisco area. Of the 90-ish former Excel interns, Excel graduates, the majority are people of color, with 50% who are Black or African American, and almost 97% women.
Thank you for that. This is for Dan Lowenstein. What is UCSF doing to remove race or racism-based elements from teaching curricula and clinical practice tools?
So there's been a very active conversation and action being taken place in all the professional schools where the education deans have been working with faculty to lay out best practices that exist in different areas already within the institution, but at other institutions as well, and then to reform the curriculum to that extent. I can say firsthand within the School of Medicine, I'm one of the course directors for one of the courses, and there's been a tremendous amount of education among the faculty and changes in the curriculum in real time. I can't speak directly to what's going on the clinical side. So we'll have to answer that unless Chancellor Hawgood wants to speak to that.
I did notice there was a question around some of the race-based algorithms in the clinical environment, and I really applaud our faculty, particularly in the nephrology the kidney and pulmonary lung function test area where race-based algorithms have been in widespread use around the world. And just, I think it was last week, Josh Adler put out an announcement that we have changed that for what is called the glomerular filtration rate, which is an important kidney function test to remove any use of race-based algorithms, and continued work is being done. And in fact, I'm proud to recognize UCSF as taking a national lead in this particular space. And there's a lot of further discussion about how we can do even more in what I could broadly term race in medicine to make a difference and be a leader in the country.
Thanks. I guess this question is also best directed to you, Sam. What is UCSF doing to support our Native American staff members in their needs for belonging and promotion? And what is UCSF doing to acknowledge requests for repatriation of Mount Sutro?
So the programs that support all of our diverse staff and faculty apply to Native Americans. We have a relatively small number, but very important voice in our community. The issue of repatriation or rematriation of Mount Sutro, I think the first step is to recognize that the university is built on traditional native lands, and there's work that will be discussed at my cabinet meeting actually next week to discuss how we could take that first step in recognizing that. The issue of land is obviously complicated, given that the university is built on the land and applies to all 10 campuses of the university, including many of the natural resources that the University of California has been asked to manage. The conversation is beginning, and I thank our Native American community for bringing that conversation to the fore. And as I said, we'll take the earliest baby step towards recognition in a cabinet discussion next week.
Great, thanks. This one's for Jeff. How does the university plan to identify staff who are ready to advance in their career? What is the structure for career advancement?
Good. It's a good and very tough question, because it's, obviously there's a huge amount of staff. Part of what our belonging in part of a couple things. Part of our anchor work is to establish specific programs for career advancement, so that staff can put their names in or can apply to those and be selected and advance more formally. But another big portion around belonging is that managers play a huge role in helping to develop their staff and helping to identify ways that staff can grow within this organization. So the biggest responsibility is for people leaders, because we all have a responsibility in helping our staff advance and putting development plans together for staff and connecting them with the right people to help them grow. So these are the types of things that are part of work that Nancy Duranto, who's the Chief Learning Officer and Director of Learning and Organizational Development, she and her amazing team are putting together more structural pathways for staff to see what development opportunities are available, how to develop managers as an advocate for their staff to really develop them in their careers.
Thanks, Jeff. This one's for Renee. Can you tell us more about the mandatory training program that's in the works? Specifically, does it discuss anti-Blackness? And do you have any data on the effectiveness of short-term trainings versus ongoing trainings?
Thank you for that question. The training was developed with the intention to establish a baseline for all members of our campus community, that we have a common language and a foundation upon which to build. We recognize that you have to have awareness you have to have knowledge, and then you have to have skill building to actually implement some of these best practices. And so we're in the process with the foundation of training of establishing what is the baseline that we expect all members of our campus community to understand. And it's aligned with our pride values and our principles of community. It is expected that people will be on this continuous equity improvement journey, and that there will be additional types of training. Embedded within our mandatory training will be little short assessments, and then access to resources, and then referrals to additional types of training that people can take as a result of their interest in advancing their learning. One training does not change everything, but it's a start, and you have to start somewhere. And it's, I think, a great start and a foundation for our campus.
Thanks for that. I guess this one goes to the Chancellor. What is UCSF doing to amplify the voices of our neighbors in terms of getting out the vote, particularly in underrepresented areas like the Bayview?
I don't know whether Vice Chancellor Vega is on the panel, but her Office of Community and Government Relations is leading our efforts to get out the vote. And I would have to, perhaps we could answer that online better, because I'm aware we have a program, but I can't give the details of it.
Thanks for that. I guess this question is also for you, Chancellor. What is the status of the Anchor Institution initiative?
So this is a very important initiative from my perspective, and I think from the entire campus leadership perspective. And I thank Wiley Liu, Kevin Grumbach, and Howard Pinderhoos and others who led the effort about 2 years ago, working with the San Francisco Foundation to develop a document and a plan that I have fully embraced and support. It has three major initiatives. One is to advance the university's programs in local hiring. Two is to advance the university's programs in local procurement, specifically in both cases for traditionally underrepresented led firms. And third is to look at our investments in the community. Part of the program is to really build a well understood inventory of all the work that is being done by many groups already across UCSF in the jail systems, in the homeless area, in substance abuse, in mental health, in food security. So many programs that are grassroots at UCSF, and bringing them under the identity of the Anchor Institute. We have committed resources, meaning a budget, and Wiley Liu is providing tremendous leadership for this. It's early days. We have just committed to it in the last 12 months, but I'm very excited. And in fact, I have a meeting with the mayor on Monday, and we'll be discussing the program with Mayor Breed. And I know that the city elected officials are also both excited and appreciative of our efforts.
Great. This one's either for Renee or Dan. Are there special trainings for UCSF police officers to help them avoid anti-Black, brown attitudes?
So the UCSF police currently go through a whole host of mandated trainings, and they have also been attending unconscious bias trainings over the course of many years. We are looking at additional course training recommendations for our police and security folks that specifically are tailored to police officers as it relates to just those issues of profiling and the interactions with Black and brown individuals in the community.
Great. Dan, did you want to say anything further on that?
No, I knew that Renee was going to be able to cover it. It's also been a topic of the work of the task force. So we've been looking carefully at it, and we'll be having recommendations related to the nature of the training.
Okay. This one's for Jeff. Considering that the Black community has been decreasing in the Bay Area, does it make sense to use Bay Area numbers as the goal metric for UCSF employee demographics?
That's a good point. Renee, do you have any opinions on that? I mean, we can certainly look at California. We can look to see.
Yeah, I think those numbers are based on the affirmative action program, in which we include the 9 Bay Area counties, which is where we typically hire from for our positions. Now with work from home, perhaps our borders are expanding, and that'll give us opportunities to do more extensive outreach and hiring of individuals, and where there are higher densities of underrepresented minority groups.
Thanks. I think this one is also for you, Renee. My community of the Bayview is poised to provide great workforce resource for UCSF. What is being done to train local children for careers in life sciences?
Great, that's a wonderful question. So the Office of Diversity and Outreach has the Center for Science and Educational Outreach. This center is over 20 years old. It's run by Don Woodson as our director. And Don and his team are engaged throughout the San Francisco Unified School District into the Oakland School District. And we are working on building the interest in science and the health sciences, supporting curriculum. We run a MESA program, an Upward Bound program. They can come to our website and identify some of those opportunities. We are in the process of really hiring through the Anchor Institution initiative, a coordinator who will help to facilitate the connections for internship opportunities and shadowing opportunities, which I think are a great addition to the work that we're already doing out of the Center for Science and Educational Outreach. There are also a number of other elements at UCSF that are also engaged in working with communities. We have a diversity hub where you can search through all of the various opportunities that are available. We're quite interested in developing science interest in Bayview Hunters Point community.
Thanks. This one's for Jeff. The person writes, I am white and I supervise a team of staff who are Black and Latinx. What resources do you recommend to help me be a better and more supportive supervisor?
I would encourage you to go onto the learning.ucsf.edu. One of the things that I presented were that managers who take the Clifton Strength coaching has a specific impact on positive impact on the engagement of Black staff, but it does improve engagement across all staff. There's also the course called Courage to Act, which is a new learning lab, which is getting really, really great reviews from participants that are taking it. That's really focused on helping leaders in a lab type environment. So lots of input and participation to look at how do we dismantle structural racism at UCSF.
And let me just add that there are a number of resources for self-work and self-discovery that are available on the ODO website, where individuals can do, reading about the historical context in this country and the impacts of things today, and do their own sort of work on this journey.
Well, great. We're just about at the end of our program. Any final thoughts from Vice Chancellor Navarro as we close out our program today?
Well, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for your job at being our moderator and for your participation, to Chancellor Hawgood. Thank you so much, Provost Lowenstein, as well. Also to all of our panelists, this has been a tremendous contribution to our campus conversation on these very critically important issues. The Chancellor's leadership team, we're all committed to ongoing equity improvement and really dismantling some of these systems that have kept some of us out of opportunities. And so we want to eliminate those inequities. Thank each of you for your participation in the forum, for the questions. I see there were 99 questions here in the Q&A, and we hope to capture those and identify ways in which we can continue to communicate with you and answer your questions. It's only going to be through our collective actions as leaders, including supervisors, managers, and directors, all aligned across all segments of our enterprise, that we'll be able to fulfill our goal of an anti-racism UCSF that is truly lives up to our principles and to our pride values. We look forward to our upcoming anti-racism town halls. In December, we'll focus on faculty, January, the health system, and then in April will be our Chancellor's Annual Forum. Again, I thank you so much for your ongoing engagement with us on these important issues. Together we can make things better. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye.